Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. Hope we're all doing good today. I'm going to be here today to do a little bit of office hours for the JavaScript and web development boot camps and hope we can, move forward with some stuff, see if we can answer some questions. Let's see where people are tuning in from. Hello from Egypt. Hey. Yeah. Hope we're having a wonderful day. Hope the week has been good. Congratulations, by the way, to everybody who's made it past these 2 weeks in in the boot camps. If you've fallen behind, don't worry. We're here to figure stuff out together. We're here to do this at our own pace. We're learning as well as we can. And learning is hard, especially learning something completely new. So it's just going to be me today, but I'm happy to answer any questions I can about the web development bootcamp and the JavaScript bootcamp. And yeah, let's see. We got folks tuning in from Ukraine. Hello. From the Philippines. Ooh, how fun. Awesome. Greetings from Spain. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, I see we've already got a question here from Arax. I have a question from create strings using template literals. It gives failures. List should be equal to the specified output. I'll tell you what. Let's see if we can solve that one together. Let's go over to the JavaScript bootcamp. This is a question from the. Why isn't it opening? Well, that's odd. Let me just do a quick refresh. There we go. So let's go over to ES6, and that's create strings using template literals. Here we go. So let's see if we can get that up for you. So let's see. It gives failures list should be equal to the specified output. Failures list should be okay. Let's do this one together. What we want is to create a list of these three strings, which are HTML elements, using the failure results list. So we can do that with a loop. So let's do a for loop. Let I equals 0, I plus plus, oh no, been a while since I've done loops. Must be smaller than r.list and I plus plus. So we've got our function make list. It takes an array, and let's test that. Console log make list with the results. Is it result? Yes, result dot failure. Right now that gives us an empty array because we're creating a failure items empty array. We're looping from I to the end, and this should be list length, not list. We're not doing anything with the array, and we're returning failure items. I like to console log always to make sure that I'm doing it right. So let's failure items dot push. Here we're going to add our template literal, which you remember is with the back tick. And then, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a little bit lazy, actually, and just copy this li thing here. Oh, Carlos is... Oh! I forgot to share the screen. I'm sorry, folks. Must be... Yep, that's not very interesting, is it? Just watching me typing. Sorry about that. Thank you for calling me out. Yes, that would have been helpful, wouldn't it have? I forgot to share the screen. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. Right, so we had the make list array, failure items. We had our for loops, and we are about to push stuff into the list. So let's do that. Thank you very much, Carlos, for pointing that out. So, li text warning. Yes, where was I? I'm gonna copy this text here because this is the part that's going to be surrounded. Then the end of it as well. So you can see here, we're already returning this string, but it's missing the middle part. And that's where the value of the array item is going to go. And here we can use the template literals crowning feature, which is being able to interpolate values into the string. So we're going to do that with R at index I. So class text warning, no var, var on top, and line break. And as I said, I like to console log always to make sure. So if you're getting the error, let's go back to your RX question. I have a question from Crate. It gives failures list should be equal to the specified output. Just make sure that when you're console logging and it looks identical to how it should at the bottom here. So there we go. That looks identical to me. Let's run those tests. And there we go. I'll give myself a pat. So I saw another question here on promise, Saichan. I would like to have some practical example on everyday use and maybe a simpler explanation. And I'll tell you what, let me just look at free code camp promise, because I think, pretty sure there was a promises explained article. And let's just go through it together. Cool. See, a promise in JavaScript is a piece of code that says, run this code in the background, and I'll let you know when I'll need to run it. So let me just take a sip of water. What we're doing here is declaring a chunk of code, kind of like a function that will run in the asynchronously, that is in the background later on, and we'll say, hey, if it works, do this thing, which is the result function you see here. And if it doesn't work, do the reject, which is the failure state. Let me just put up this link to this article. I've just posted it into the chat. You should see it there. So the way this works is that when we declare a when we declare a promise, what we can do is later on, we can later on make it run its code, and we wait for it to finish, and then we say then to be able to say, okay, if it works, and we call that result function, then we'll use then to be able to say, hey, you ran successfully. This is what you do in the case that you run successfully. Otherwise, let me just look for an example that uses, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, that uses catch. So if a promise does not resolve successfully, then we'll use the catch statement here to be able to say, hey, the reject statement is now being run. My promise did not run successfully. This is what you'll do in that case, which in most cases is going to be a failure state or an error state. I suggest checking out this article, but I also suggest going back to those exercises from before. Let me just go back real quick, because let me just scroll down here to the promise parts of ES6. Yep. And yes, because the get help section I can highly recommend, because a lot of them are going to have either articles or videos on these. So again, an example is going to be a network request in JavaScript. Let's say we're loading up, say, a website that displays a series of blog posts, right? We can have this be loaded asynchronously. That is, go to my server and say, hey, give me all of the blog posts from this person. And then that'll be done in the background. Who knows how long it'll take. And with the promise, we say, when you're done, if they were loaded successfully, if the internet connection worked, then display them. If they didn't work, display an error saying like, and you might have seen this in a lot of websites, like, hey, error loading blog posts, please try again or refresh the page. This is a use of promises. So I hope that helps. Let's see what other questions we get. Rashid is confused about, I'm quite confused with the last two recursion problems in JavaScript. The recursive function was assigned to a const, but it returned to an array. How did it do that? Let's go back to recursion. Here. I haven't finished it. Oh my goodness. I've been caught. So give me a sec. Let's see. The last two, huh? Okay, cool. what we've got here is a function called countdown. I don't see a const here. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So we will create a function called countdown with one parameter, n. The function should use recursion to return an array containing the integers n through 1. If the function is called with a number less than 1, the function should return an empty array. For example, calling this with n equals 5 should return the array 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Your function must use recursion by calling itself and must not use loops of any kind. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take a look at this example here on the left. What it's doing here is counting up, which is almost what we want to do, but which is almost what we want to do, but what we want to do is count down instead of up. So let's read our function again. If the function is called with a number less than 1, the function should return an empty array. Let's do that first. So if n is less than 1, is with a number less than 1, then we'll return an empty array. Just following the instruction there. If the function is called with an yes, then we're going to const. I see the confusion. Yes, of course. Const count down array going to be equals to calling count down with n minus 1. N will count. We will push onto countdown array, but instead of push, we're going to unshift, sorry, n. Then we'll return that countdown array. So let's try it just like that. Let's console log countdown 1. This gives us an array with 1. What's happening? We're declaring so n is 1. We're saying if n is less than 1, which it's not, so we skip over that. Otherwise, we const countdown array countdown n minus 1. N minus 1 is 0. So we'll just stay there for a second in the call stack. Let's go back up. N is less than 1, which it is. It returns an empty array. So this is an empty array. We will then unshift n, which is 1, to the beginning of that array. And this is where the confusion comes in, I believe. The recursive function was assigned to a const, but it returned an array. We returned an array as the return value of this function. It is a const, but since it's an array, it can be manipulated. So we've returned that unshifted array, and we've returned countdown array, which gives us an array with 1. So what if we wanted to do it with 2? What's going on here? Let's look again. Countdown of 2. N is less than 1? No, it's not. Const countdown array is countdown of n minus 1, which is 1. And we already know. What's going on? Sorry, all of my stuff got refreshed for a second there. We already know what this returns because we tried it out. So we know that this is an array with 1 in it. We unshift to the beginning of it 2, and then we return that array, which is how we get this. Same goes for 3. Again, we know already what countdown n minus 1, which in this case is 3. N minus 1 is 2. We already know what that is from having done it before. So we just take that return result, countdown array unshift, so put it at the beginning, and return that. I hope that helps. See what else we got. Web dev question. In the registration form assignment, I used Rothko painting as a background. The form appeared almost psychedelic. Where can we learn styling of web pages so that it's kind and calming to users? What a good question. What a good question. Where can I learn about best practices? There's a couple of these. For example, there's a couple of blogs that I can recommend, such as CSS Tricks. which is a fantastic resource. I'm gonna post that here in the chat. Um, what it makes sense to do is to look into things like color coordination. I like it a lot of the time. It also a lot of the time it also falls down to trying to figure out what looks good. A lot of the time with CSS, I also recommend um, not using the default color names like red or green when you're declaring colors, because what that does is it uses the default value of a color and it's quite intense. So sometimes there are things like there are resources like color wheels and that sort of thing to help you determine what combination of colors can be really helpful. There's also really good blogs out there. Smashing Magazine is another one of them, although I don't know if it's free. Let me take a look here. Smashing Magazine. I think they have like some great books and stuff that are pretty good. And they cover a whole bunch of stuff, including CSS. But they're some of the best tips on, and of course, I will put that in the chat. Um, yeah, I hope it went up. They not just CSS, but a whole bunch of tips on making good websites. So I hope that helps. Vicky asks, "Is this like an exception in Java?" I'm guessing that we're talking about the promises. And yes, with promises, the catch part is going to help us catch the exception, like in Java. I'm not super experienced in Java anymore, but I believe that's how it works. Oh, V Prevails makes a great point. Promises are kind of hard to understand, and it's fine if you don't 100% understand it fully. Absolutely. Let me thank you, V Prevails. I think one thing to really bear in mind is that when you're dealing with new concepts at such a high rate, this is a 6-week bootcamp, the exposure to those concepts is almost more important than fully 100% grasping them, because you'll be familiar with them well enough to someday down the line say, hey, hold on, this looks familiar. Maybe I can use that recursion thing. Or maybe this is, oh yeah, I remember promises. Let me look them up again. And then you read up on them again, and then you try to apply your use there, and there they'll click and make even more sense than before. Kinjal asks, "Is it asynchronous?" I'm going to assume this is about promises, and so promises are meant to do asynchronous things that you can then make synchronous by saying, "Hey, wait for this to be done," and once it's done, then run your code synchronously. Let's see. Seichin asks, "So when we found an error in a web page, this page is no longer here. Could it be a promise in action?" It could be, depending on how the website works. Say it's having problems loading your blog or your tweets or your posts or your Instagram photos, that sort of thing, where it's like, hey, I fired off a promise to grab those, and getting them back gave me an error because I don't know, maybe the server is down or something, or your local connection is down. That's when it can say this page is no longer here or something like that. Cool. Oh, ooh, ooh. I have a super Leon asks, I don't think this is basic web dev question. Let's see. From the forms work, if that's okay. I thought it was label input. However, Free Code Camp teaches us label input label, which is the best practice. Oh, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. Let me look it up with DuckDuckGo real quick. Let's go on MDN form input. And let's see what it says. Because a lot of the time we can have, for example, labels next to inputs, but sometimes for checkboxes, from my experience, that can be a little bit different. And I'm actually not sure what. Here we go. Let's take a look at checkboxes. Okay. So here we can see, for example, checkboxes is input next to a label. And it doesn't close it. Yeah, so and you can click on the label to be able to check the checkbox. Cool. Let's take a look at radio buttons real quick. I remember this being a bit weird. There is I don't know if there's a super strict best practice. Dan, you know what would help me? Could you tell me what exercise in the boot camp that is? Because I actually haven't done the new the new beta. And we can take a look there. Let me just see if I can go back real quick. Responsive web design. If you want to set custom checkboxes, it helps to have label after input. So there you go. Oh, V Prevails also has, let me see if I can, whoopsie. So there's a website here from V Prevails on associating labels implicitly. Y'all are so helpful. Thank you. It depends on the use case how you might want to do the label. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much, V Prevails. So that's that question. Let's see. Oh, Kinjal asks, so it's not a question, sorry. Just FYI, if somebody's interested in learning recursion, I would also highly recommend this book called The Little Schemer. I don't know that book, but thank you very much for the recommendation. Oh, Leon says Webflow has a great article on color theory for web design. Would you happen to have a link, Leon, please? I'd love to see it. So let's see what other questions we got. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope I pronounced your name right. Salahuddin asks how and when you started your coding journey. Did some coding. I did some coding courses in high school, and then I started doing it in university. Somebody took a chance on me and gave me a job, and I've been doing it ever since. This is when I was around 17, so a million years ago, because I'm very old. Cool. Thanks for your question. See what else we got. Do we have any other questions? I think I've answered everything so far. Ooh, we're keeping up with all the questions. I'm excited. I'll tell you what. While we get some more questions in, why don't we do another recursion example, if I may? Because one of my favorites is the what's it called? The factorial numbers. Let me just go down to, actually, any will do. Let's do a quick factorial real quick. If you're not familiar with factorial, it looks like this. For example, 7 exclamation mark, right? And exclamation mark says, okay, this is the same as 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. This should be a comment. This is what factorial does, right? And how we can do that we can actually do this with recursion quite simply, I would say. Function factorial, and that will take a number. So we know what to do if factorial is 1. If we're calling factorial for 1, it's always 1. So if n is smaller than 1, we'll return 1. Smaller than or equals to 1, pardon me. Otherwise, we're going to return n times factorial n minus 1. Now, this looks a little complex, so let's start playing around with it. Console log factorial of 1. We already know that this is going to give us 1. But what about factorial 2? Let's take a look at the flow here. N is not less than or equals to 1 if we call factorial 2. So it is instead return 2 times factorial of n minus 1. And we already know what factorial of 1 is. It's 1. So that gives us, let's give it a try. Factorial 2. It's 2. Now for 3, it's going to be the same thing. We'll call factorial 3, and is not less or equals to 1. We'll instead return 3 times factorial of 2. And we already know what the factorial of 2 is, so 3 times 2 should be 6. And so on and so forth. I love this example. I think it does it quite succinctly. So let's see if we got any questions. Kinjal says, I've been having issues with responsive design in HTML currently. I'm trying to make my page responsive and I'm trying forever to switch grid layout to block. What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to make the website sort of stack on top of each other? If it's that, for that, I would actually recommend, I don't know if the bootcamp has gotten there yet, but you can totally try something called, oh my goodness, I forgot the name. Media queries. Let me just look up MDN media queries. Yes. And with media queries, what you can do is declare, hey, if, for example, I'm just sending a link into the chat. With media queries, what you can do is say, hey, if, for example, if, for example, the device width is such and such big, you can use, instead of grid, you can display block. It'll help us if you send us an example. Maybe you have a code pen or something that you could throw up and we can debug it together. But yeah, I can recommend media queries as a way to declare CSS for different device widths. Hope that helps. Can we use JavaScript for game development? Yes. I don't know of any examples. I don't actually do a lot of game development myself, but I know it is possible. I don't know if anybody has an example. Game development JavaScript. I believe a lot of people do make. Oh, look at that! Of course, there's an MDN about game development. So there you go. Check it out. Oh, V Prevails has an example that completely escaped my head. Phaser. This is a framework, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. V Prevails, but this is also with JavaScript for making games. Carlos has a recommendation as well. HTML5 canvas for web games. Cool. Oh. And Carlos recommend debugging CSS. Please check that out. I don't know the book. I haven't read the book myself, but it sounds like just a thing. My question is on the first project on the web dev. How do I turn my project into a single submittable link despite using external CSS for styling? I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. So you want to put your link up somewhere like on CodePen, and you want to use external CSS. Could you maybe tell us what you have right now and see? Let's take a look at the project itself. Maybe that would help. So let me just go back here and let's look at the first project. So I'm going to scroll a little bit quickly. That's not. The first project is the tribute page. Is that right? So let's see how that looks. Objective: build a CodePen IO app that has a functionality similar to this. Cool. Let's open that up. I remember doing this with Jess a while ago. It was good fun. So your question is, how do you get it to be view in editor? And I believe, I could be wrong, is it possible to download your stuff from? I mean, otherwise, if whether it's possible to download your stuff from CodePen? Otherwise, what you could do is copy these over into an HTML, a CSS, and a JavaScript file, and just save them and link them accordingly. I think, for example, where is our HTML that says block quote? You can import the CSS and you can import the JavaScript in order to do that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Rashid asks, what is the best place to host our first portfolio that is free? Ton of options. Some options include something called Netlify, where you can set up. Oh, right. No, let me take a step back. What you can do is put this up on a Git repository, say on GitHub. If you haven't, go back to the events and check out the Q&A that we had with Rizal Scarlett from GitHub, telling us all about Git and GitHub. I'd recommend put your repositories up on GitHub. All of your code samples. If you want to host a website, you can also do that on GitHub using GitHub Pages. Let me see if I can get that link. Pages.github.pages. Yeah, you can use GitHub Pages. You'll find a ton of instruction this week. Sorry, you'll find a ton of instructions up on there to be able to get your website up on GitHub. But there's time for that, so don't. So I would recommend checking out checking out GitHub Pages if that's something that's interesting for you, or that Netlify as well. If Netlify.com, let's have it. It is Netlify. Here, I'll send a link to that as well. You'll find all of that on the recordings of previous events, which I highly recommend. Salahuddin asks, any live for contributing to open source with real world project? Any tips? You will find a ton of this in the recording of the Q&A we had with Rizal. But in short, look on GitHub, for example. Let me just go on GitHub real quick. GitHub. If you're not familiar with GitHub, it's where a lot of open source code gets hosted. And I believe if you go on Explore, you can go on Topics. And here you can do things like find different kinds of topics that interest you, be it 3D, algorithms, Android. What else we got? Ansible. There's a ton. This is just the letter A, huh? So there's a ton of different stuff that you can take a look at. Explore around. If you're using something that's useful, if you're using like a dependency or something, say you're using, I don't know, Tailwind or some other CSS framework, and you find something that's interesting for you. I don't actually know if Tailwind is open source. Okay, an example of something like Tailwind that's open source. What you can do then is say, open up an issue there and be like, hey, I think it'd be cool if we did this or that. And that's totally an open source contribution. Seichan has a question. I have a question kind of not related to Bootcamp. I've seen that to become a web dev, you can learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and then start and then dive down. But what about becoming a software dev? Oh, I understand your question. So you're saying like to become a web developer, you can learn these things and then go from there. What about becoming a software developer? So the reason I'm a little bit confused about that question is because to me, web development is pretty much just a part of software development in general. But I think what you're asking is, okay, so we've done web development. What about non-web development for things like mobile or desktop apps or what else? Other kinds of apps like for, I don't know, smartwatches or stuff like that. Maybe a little bit of tinkering with hardware. That comes in a lot of variety. The thing that makes web development kind of similar for everybody is that at the core, you will always need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Whereas for software development, you have a ton of options. You can go for Python for doing data science. You can go with Elixir for doing lots of like concurrent stuff. You can do R for doing statistics stuff. So there's a ton of options and you just got to pick something that interests you. In fact, if we go back to Free Code Camp real quick, there's actually quite a few other certifications that you can take a look at. So for example, data visualization, quality assurance, scientific computing with Python, data analysis with Python, security. I had lots of Python here, machine learning. There's lots of different faceted parts to it. And you just got to, what I would recommend is find a topic that interests you, if it interests you, and dive in. It might involve Python. There is no best way? I think as beginners, like something that happened to me a lot as a beginner is I would spend too much time wondering what is the best thing to do right now for me. Do I want to learn HTML first? Do I want to learn JavaScript first? Do I want to spend a lot and I would spend a lot of time and energy sort of frustrated trying to figure out what is the optimal path to get it to do that. And I found that with time just taking the time to learn one thing, realizing maybe that this isn't for me, that was time well spent because I was getting those concepts into me. So let's have a look at Carlos says, this is more or less of a question and more of a tip. I recommend reading and checking regular expressions exercises before the next masterclass. They are tricky. This is for the JavaScript bootcamp. On Monday, we're going to be doing regular expressions, and it's going to be a lot of people. A lot of people have been writing to me saying like, "Oh my goodness, we're going to do regular expressions. They're going to be super hard." We'll do our best. We can totally, we'll totally do our best to be able to cover those. Leon says, yes, of course. Rizal did a great Twitter space last night for first time open source stuff. I think those get recorded. I'm not an expert, but check it out. So let's see. Any other questions? Oh, for example, Carlos says Google has a free Kotlin course for Android. And yeah, they are super handy. Leon says that they are indeed recorded. Yeah, I just don't know. I think you just have to go to that link and play it again. I believe. Let me see if I can get that link. If you'll give me a second. See if I can get that link because I posted it into the general channel of the Discord. By the way, folks, in case you are wondering, in case you have ever any questions, like check out the forum. You see the link there. Check out the Discord. You'll find the link to the Discord there. Come in, ask questions. I'm going to give everybody, I just remembered something. I've been given a tip very early in my career for learning regular expressions. I'm going to show this as well on Monday. But if you've got some time and you want to mess around with regular expressions, let me recommend a game that helped me a lot. That's called Regex Crossword. I'll post the link here. And I will put that here. So what this is a tutorial on the web for being able to learn regular expressions. And it's done so in the form of a crossword. There's instructions there. This is super fun and I really like it. And look, they've got a mobile version now, which is, whoa. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so if you're interested in trying out regular expressions, totally check that out. Yes, thank you, Lan. You say you DM'd me the link. Where did you DM it on? Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Yes. How do I get that link? Huh. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 second. I don't know why, like Twitter's being a little bit fighting me right now. Yes, got it. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Leon. Let's paste that link in. So I just pasted into the chat the link for the recording with Rizal about finding good first issues with in open source. What's the link to the Discord? You will find the link to the Discord in the forum. So if you go to group.glasscentral.com, there you'll find the forum for the JavaScript bootcamp, and in there you'll find the link to the Discord. Hope that helps. What other questions we got? Thank you, Ramon. You solved my never-ending confusion or understanding software dev term. It always sounded like you can be web dev or software dev. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really agree with that. I think web, like what you're doing in web is developing software. So, which really what it's telling us is what kind of how this all falls down to naming and how you want to present what you do. So thank you for that. Rashid asks, is there a path for cybersec infosec after completing the FCC FCC being a free code camp curriculum? I know this way down the line, but I'm just curious. No, good question. Um, I I haven't done it myself, and I'll say it right away. I'm not an infosec expert. Cybersec and infosec are cybersecurity and information security. There is a certification on Free Code Camp that you can do, but I haven't done it myself. And I'll tell you right away, that is not my area of expertise. Carlos asks, what kind of job do you do now? Your specialty, I mean. I do a little bit of everything. My day job is doing something called developer relations, where I do things like give public talks, give workshops at companies. I do lots of teaching, lots of education space stuff, helping enable developers to use the tools of the company I work for to be able to make their software development lives easier. But I also develop software. I On the side I do some some freelancing and software development, be it web. I think I do web, Mac OS, and mobile at the moment. So, iOS and Android stuff. Yeah. What else we got? What is the debounce function in JavaScript? Uh, oh, I don't, I don't know. I've never heard of this. Let's look it up. Debounce JavaScript. And would you look at that? There is a free code camp article. So let's have a look at that together. I'm just going to paste a link in here. So, what is debounce? In JavaScript, a debounce function makes sure that your code is only triggered once per user input. Search box suggestions, text autofield saves, and eliminating double clicks are all use cases for debounce. So it would appear to me, just from reading that what debounce does is allows us to. It's in the web, so it's a browser functionality that allows us to only allow us to do a thing once at a time, maybe to, for example, prevent spam, by pressing enter too much. I recommend checking out that article. As said, it's not something I know off the top of my head. It's something we're always learning. Leon asks, having started ES6 this week, I was away ill. Is it possible to catch up alone? In my opinion, yes. I think we've kind of made it past the most difficult part of the basic JavaScript, which in my opinion is the recursion and the loops. And you've all done that wonderfully. And if you haven't yet, take your time. We're meant to be doing this at our own pace. Check out the recordings. I go through them there. And if you have any questions, Discord and forum are always there for you. Let's see what else we got. I love all the support that you're all showing yourselves. Yeah. Well, that's not the best URL, huh? What is this? Let me fix this here. There we go. Let me paste that in. Any other questions, folks? Keep them coming. So Vika says, it's easy making a website. It's so hard making a Factorial program. The idea just doesn't click. What do I do? And I think a lot of it, if I may say, applies the same way that you would making a website at first. Making a website at the start probably wasn't that easy, or probably didn't click. Doing things like, I don't know, understanding how to encapsulate things inside tags. The fact that, for example, the H1 tag would go inside the main tag. Now that we look at it in retrospect, we think, that was easy, but it had to click and we had to struggle to understand it. And Factorial problem, I'm not going to say that it's as easy as making a website. Again, I don't think making a website is that easy, but it is difficult in a different way. And what I recommend is practice. Don't get frustrated when you're stuck. A lot of times with software development, I can tell you to this day, I get stuck in an almost daily basis. I got stuck live this week, right? I think it was on Monday that I got stuck live. And yes, it's a little frustrating. And yes, it's a little bit like, am I ever going to do this? I even oftentimes started having doubts. Am I actually good at this? Could I be a software developer if I get stuck all the time? And I think by communicating that, and I think that by practicing and being patient, these things fall into place, especially even though you understand, um, even though you understand you think you don't understand something, by being exposed to it, you sort of understand it a little bit. You understand that recursion involves having a function call itself. So you've got that baseline of understanding. You know that there's a base case. Yeah. And as folks, you are all sharing so much good stuff. As V Prevail says, you need to learn to get how to get stuck a lot. And it's handling that, purveying, learning to know when is the right time to ask for help. This is a recommendation I give to a lot of learners. Um, do not be like there's two types of people I find. Those that ask for help too early and don't really allow themselves to learn, and those who never ask for help because and I'm definitely in that camp, in the latter camp, where I take too long to ask for help and then I get frustrated and then I'm like, I never asked for help because I'm embarrassed or something. I'm definitely in that in that camp. What I recommend is give yourself a good amount of time before it becomes too long, say half an hour, be consistent. Um, Allow yourself to try and understand the problem. And if you really can't get anywhere, reach out for help. People are there to help you. V Prevail says, is get used to the discomfort, learn to talk about it with others. Totally. Leon says you pulled through and proves we all hit that wall at times. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. I'm not to the recursion part. It's up next for me. I know it's a function that calls itself, but is there a tidbit that you can give that might help me get it better? Sure. I mean, like you're gonna probably be trying this a couple of times. You're probably gonna get stuck before it clicks entirely. Actually, if you watch, I highly recommend watch the recordings of the videos. Um, Check out your best friend is going to be. Let me just take a look at one of the examples here. Your best friend is going to be the get help button. There you'll find hints, videos, and articles that explain recursion. Um, I've got a couple of them pinned. We've been posting them as not only here. You'll find articles from Free Code Camp on that explain recursion. There's videos as well. Practice is my tidbit, and don't and it'll take a while and it'll click. I love what B Prevail says because it's fine to not understand something. Sometimes it needs some time and then your brain will start getting it. It's true. It's a skill. It's like riding a bicycle. I didn't know how to ride a bicycle at first. It took me some time. Same goes for something like swimming or playing the saxophone or something. Oh, Carlos, see, I says don't keep trying a problem for more than 10 minutes. It's not helpful. Absolutely. It's different for different people. 10 minutes is an absolutely good amount of time to say, you know what, I don't get this at all. Oh, Carlos, I love this. It happens to me a lot. I just go for a walk or have a coffee, speaking with friends, even about it, and back to the problem later or next day. I think it's better. Absolutely. I can tell you so many stories of mine involve me being stuck, me trying and trying and trying. And when I just, and my partner would say like, hey, let's go for a walk. And even during the walk, because I'm kind of stubborn, I would be thinking about the problem in the back of my mind. And even as I'm processing this in the back of my brain, ideas would come up. It's like, I'm going to try this. Totally. Seichan asks a great question. May I ask some tips about practice? I read a lot about just do a project, but as a beginner, it's kind of hard to think what kind of project you can do. So any other possibilities? And this is hard because as a software developer, I struggle a lot myself. Um, I struggle a lot with myself with coming up with ideas. I don't have a lot of like super cool fun ideas that I come up with. I learn best by just sort of throwing myself at a problem. But when it comes to projects, what helps there is to sort of think like what I like to do, for example, with something like what shall I do? Like what project can I make? Is to try and replicate something, not copy, but replicate. For example, if I were to look at a website like, gosh, I don't know, like YouTube, right? Now, not from a video player perspective, but how could I like say if we're doing web development, how could I replicate the layout of YouTube to help me understand, for example, how things are laid out, how colors work, how transparency and hover, um, yeah, how all of that stuff works. I find that trying to make my own version of something, and maybe you give it that little spin that makes it unique to yours, and you can say, hey, this is my special to-do list app that works, and you can make it open source. Yeah, that's what I like to do. To For example, or text generators, for example, like that take quotes from your favorite films or books or films or books or video games or whatever you like. Maybe setting up a website to as a gallery for your pets. Um, super helpful. I love all of the support coming from folks. Try to write down what executes first. It's like a family tree, but the first and last occurrency. Love it. Ooh, V Prevails brings up a good point. Has rubber duck debugging come up yet? Um, Folks, if you're not familiar with rubber duck debugging, I love this. A lot of times when you're working alone, rubber duck programming, the concept of what it is trying to understand the problem that you're stuck in better by explaining it to a rubber duck. If you're not familiar with rubber duck, I actually have a rubber duck now. Um, Something like this, a rubber duck. And you explain to your rubber duck what the problem is and try to put it in terms that the rubber duck can follow along with. Of course, respecting that the rubber duck does have a grasp of the knowledge. And what it's saying is trying to explain. And this is what happened to me on Monday, huh? I was trying to explain what I was doing, and that helped me understand the ideas better in my head. Kinjal says, this is about recursion. The way I kind of understood it, it was to know that there's always a base case. If you can figure out the base case and move upwards, it kind of works in recursion. That's a great point. And that's what I was doing before, where I was calling factorial 1 and then factorial 2, which builds on factorial 1, and so on and so forth. That's a great point. Let's see what else, if we've got any questions. Oh, I've got such good tips. Write down explanations. Go back to those when I'm stuck. That's a great point. Thank you, Ian. Um, Oh, Carlos. Oh my goodness. Yes. Um, Once I was speaking with a friend who knows far more than me, and then I answered myself. This happens so much because when you're explaining, when you're processing, I'm not a brain expert, but when you're processing in your brain something like, how can I put this in terms that my colleague will understand? You start putting it into these terms, and then all of a sudden they click. And that's super helpful. Thank you for that tip. Try to explain the issue to somebody, and this will give you space to reach a solution. Thank you. Wow, this is great. You all should be doing this office hours, not me. Love it. Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that that's helped. Remember, folks, that we're all in this together. We're doing this boot camp, we're learning new stuff, and it's oftentimes going to get us stuck. And that's okay, because part of that learning is trying to understand a concept, and there's no exams here, there's no grades. This is trying to help you reach that solution. Yeah. Any other questions that we might have? Maybe some ideas for articles. Maybe you've got a solution that you'd love to share. Anything. I'm here to help. Let's Ooh, Carlos says Barbara Oakley's book and course helps to understand how we learn good stuff. Absolutely. And if you don't know who Barbara Oakley is, we had her and Zach as a guest on the last week's session, learning how to learn. That was a fantastic session on stuff. And it's saying a lot of what I'm saying here. Things like, you know, um, stuff like stuff like stepping away from a problem, giving yourself the space to learn, and stuff like that. I highly recommend checking out that recording. Um, again, you can find the events and all of that in the classcentral.com website. Ada says, uh, I was wondering if there's going to be a guest session next week. I think perhaps about ethics of software development and privacy might be great. Yes, we've actually talked about this. We do have a guest session for next week. I don't think we've announced it yet. And it's going to be great, but I also want to do something about ethics and software development and privacy. I'm very much all about that. Yes. And as you said, Ida says, we're still kind of new to JavaScript, but I guess these are very important topics as well. I agree 100%. Unrelated, but it's just okay. Jess is fine. She sends her best. It's just me today, but yeah, no, she's very well. She's very chill. Carlos says, I got stuck in basic algorithms and I forgot all from before. LOL. Any recommendation? Do you mean like you got? Hold on. You mean that you got up until? Sorry, let me go back to the curriculum of the JavaScript algorithms and regular expressions, debugging, basic data structures. It's this one, right? Basic algorithm scripting. If you've forgotten everything, don't worry. I think, if I may recommend, I maybe reframe that. It's not that you forgot everything. Maybe you forgot the details. Is that correct to assume? Maybe you forgot. Maybe you remember that there's such a thing as loops. Maybe you remember that there's such a thing as recursion, that there's such a thing as arrow functions. What I would recommend is look stuff up a lot. Like, memorizing syntax is not something that we're here to do. We're not books. We're not lookup machines. We are, yes, congratulations on making it this far. Like, you're well ahead. If you want to, by the way, if you ever want to help out with this sort of thing, please, like, I know you've been doing this already, like, answer any questions that might be there when I'm not around to answer. Please feel free to do so. Yeah, basic algorithm that so look stuff up is what I recommend. Don't worry that you've forgotten the exact syntax. I forget syntax all the time. In fact, you've seen me, like, I didn't know what debounce was, and I'm sure I've used it, but I forgot the name because I'm human and I don't have everything here. Yeah. Happy to have you, but she was poorly the other day. Should she's second? No, Jess is totally fine. Just that it's just me today. Yeah, but like, don't get frustrated if you forget stuff, because we are covering a lot. We are going through a lot, and like, you can go back and look at the titles every now and then and just be like, oh yeah, like, what we're doing is I feel too human sometimes. Yeah, I can relate with that. What I would say is, be patient with yourself. Remember that you're learning, and every now and then just think like it's having a tool set. It's having a toolbox, right? What you're doing is adding tools to that toolbox and saying recursion, functions, arrow functions, template literals, and so on. And you don't remember what it does. Like, sorry, you don't remember how it's called or what or where exactly to apply it, but you have ideas. You're getting exposed to these and thinking like, maybe I can get my arrow functions tool here and apply it here. And then you're going to have to read up maybe on how to use it again, because it's been, a hot minute since you've used, I don't know, a complicated screwdriver, for example. So I hope that helps. Like, don't beat yourself up if you forgotten syntax. Syntax is hard, and that's why we let the computers memorize the syntax and not us. Well, if there are no more questions, we are getting to the top of the hour. Couple things. We will be starting with lessons again on Monday. So the events you will find here on Class Central will still be with Free Code Camp as always. MDN docs are a great resource as always. And if you've got any questions, please ask them to the group in the forum or on the Discord. And yeah, I think if there's no other questions. Legend asks, how can one improve learning JS? Give us some tips. My most important tips is to be patient with yourself. As I was telling Carlos before, you're not going to memorize all of the syntax. Practice, do some of these exercises. You might not be able to do them all and like in one go. Take breaks, please. You're doing a lot. We have a life as well that we need to live. Like getting all of these skills in one go is hard. So be patient with yourself. Have fun. If you're frustrated, ask for help. If you're stuck, ask for help. Like that's what we're all here for. And when asking for help, I have a tip for asking for asking for help. I love this. When you're asking for help, ask for help in a way that's helpful to your helper. So instead of saying I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, try to say, for example, I'm stuck in let's say I'm stuck in reverse a string and I don't know what to do. Let's, instead of thinking like that, think, hey, I'm stuck in this exercise. I think I've got this solution going so far. This is what I don't understand. Again, verbalizing that question also might help you reach that answer. So totally like put that question in as much detail as you can so that the person helping you can jump immediately onto the problem and say like, you just got to do this and this and this, right? So asking for questions effectively is hard. And I love what Carlos says here. Think, write, review, and practice, practice, practice. Absolutely. Okay, I think with that, I will leave you all. Oh, read as teaching, I meant. Oh, I like that. Yeah, thanks, folks, for stopping by. We'll see you all on Monday. Both boot camps will be back on by then. And any other questions or stuff, forum, Discord, and each other. If you know the answers to some of these questions, please answer them. I beg you. Like, this is going to be helpful for your fellow learners, but for you as well. Explaining stuff is one of my favorite ways to learn. Cool. With that, I wish you a wonderful rest of your weekend. Get plenty of rest, and see you on Monday. Take care, everybody. Bye now.